everyone, and welcome to the June 21st, 2016 edition of The Way with Anoa. Hi, everybody. Hope you're doing well. I am back from Chicago, People Summit. Whoop, whoop. So I'm not necessarily, I'm being honest, not as prepared. We're going to couple things happened on today, but I really wanted to just get right in and talk to you guys about some news, live updates. We have another primary coming up next week. What? Primaries? I thought we were done with primaries. Yes, the New York State primary, congressional elections, etc. Zephyr Teach Out next Tuesday, June 28th. We are a week out. That is a big seat, right? There's just a lot going on right now. So first, I just want to say hi. Welcome. Thank you, everybody. Shout out to folks who I met. So I was at the People Summit Friday through Sunday. Met some folks who actually watched the show. So shout out to you guys. Hi, Anthony. You know, how everybody else I met. There are people who like, oh, I recognize you from Ben, or they know Ben's show, right? Like a lot of people know Ben's show, which is very cool. Shout out to Jordan from the Young Turks. Because I was like, yeah, you know, I collaborate with Benjamin Dixon. He was like, oh, I know Ben. I was like, very cool. It's kind of cool when you go someplace, a big event like that, and it's like, wow, people actually know and are aware of the content that we produce and put out there. So very cool indeed. I'm gonna get adjusted a little bit better. Sorry, you guys. So that's pretty cool. So People Summit. Okay. So as I've talked about before, People Summit was an opportunity to kind of convene, you know, the primary race is technically over. We still have the convention, of course, you know, but there's been so much effort, so much work, so much organizing from the campaign side, the grassroots side, National Nurses United, People for Bernie, Democratic Socialists of America, Progressive Democrats of America. So many different organizations came together and organized the People Summit, right? Took place at McCormick Place. Beautiful venue, huge venue, beautiful venue. Awesome time. Got to finally meet Yvette Carnell in, you know, the flesh. Actually, there's a pretty cool video I tweeted out with her and Arami, who is the funky academic. Check them both out on Twitter and on YouTube and Facebook, talking about the black vote in Bernie, and basically how black voters killed Bernie Sanders. It's pretty funny. It's not necessarily what you think. It's pretty funny. You definitely should go check them out. If you have not already checked out content from Breaking Brown before, definitely go check out Yvette and everyone else over there. Really good stuff, right? But this was the opportunity. This was the opportunity to get to meet with other folks who had been building kind of on this left side of movement building that we've all been engaged in over the past year, for the most part, right? There were some really great breakout sections. I was really excited. I got to meet Linda Sarsour Friday night. I was barefoot. I was exhausted. It was late Friday night, but it was really awesome. But aside from the who's who of progressive, you know, people watching, I did. There were some really good breakout sessions. And of course, Nina Turner gave an amazing speech, as always, on the Saturday afternoon session. I mean, to hear Nina speak, I've heard her speak at a rally before, right? I've seen her speak in videos. I have never been so close to that woman. The energy she exudes is amazing. Nina, whatever you do, we are all here for you. We are absolutely all here for this. Like, seriously, whatever Nina Turner does, there is an army ready, waiting, lined up for you. So there were really great breakout sessions. There's a really good opportunity. I got to attend one particular panel called Media and the Movement, which is pretty relevant because that's what we've been really heavily focused on here at the Progressive Army, is movement building, being engaged as a progressive voice. You know, Ben has done a really good job of showcasing different information and stuff on his show. Project Sanity has done stuff on their show. I do what I do on my show. So it seemed very important. And the panel was consistent of Lee Fong from The Intercept and Sean King. And I am drawing a blank of the editor of Yes Magazine. And there was another young woman on the panel as well. Kind of blanked them out. Sorry, no diss. But it was a really good panel. And one of the best things I think that I got out of that panel was from Sean King, who said he is not an independent journalist, right? He is a staff writer for the New York Daily News. He has been an independent journalist previously, but he is not one now, right? What he said, though, was he is able to do and say what he wants within a mainstream news outlet because he has the following to back up his message. And there was so much conversation about building our reach, building out opportunities for those voices, but also building up that support. Like, we have to support the work. So I have to support the work of my fellow, truth sayers out there. We need you to support us to make sure that we actually have representative, information building and media access, right? So I thought it was really good. But one of the interesting points, and this is actually a thread that kind of run throughout, that was an unspoken issue with the summit. Like I said, it was a great opportunity. People came from all over and got a chance to meet and build. I got to sit down with women that I hadn't been working with, women and men I've been working with through Women for Bernie and African Americans for Bernie and People for Bernie and other organizations over the past year. Had not met several people in real life in the flesh. And that was so valuable to actually sit down and have conversations, face real time with people, right? There was no one, definitive answer to the what's next question. A lot of people have their different ideas. Different organizations had their booths. Shout out to People's Revolution. People's Revolution occupied, in true Occupy fashion, occupied space at the People's Summit and basically utilized a booth that had been paid for by another organization that was not able to staff it. So, I mean, there was a lot going on. Some of you may have even saw on Twitter how Jill Stein was miffed because she was not permitted to speak on Friday night. It's not very clear exactly what happened or if she had been completely denied, ability to be there at all. The Green Party did have a booth on site. They were tabling and getting signatures on site as well without any issues. So that's not really clear. It does seem that maybe she showed up and wanted to speak and was told no. If that is in fact the case, you can't just show up at events and demand to speak and then get upset about it. Like, that's just kind of petty and not really a mature way of doing things. But anyway, but one of the things that happened during that I think is a very good point about all of this movement building. We're so focused on a rah-rah moment and kumbaya and we're all together and we're all one and Bernie's for all of us. But here's the thing. We cannot disregard opportunities to address where we need improvement. We can not fail to address opportunities for where we have made miscalculations, for things that continue to be overlooked and disregarded. So one of the things that in the session we were all in, the media and the movement session, that Yvette Carnell raised was the lack of support for Black media by the left, by progressives, right? The lack of support, not just for Black media, but for Black voices in general. There were strategically placed voices of color throughout this weekend. But as I've made comments about safe spaces isolated over here and there, of course, there was a great delegation on Juneteenth, which was, for those who are not aware, Juneteenth is June 19th. It is the day where the last slaves in Texas found out they were free. So there was a great delegation of Blackness represented there, but there was not necessarily a clear ability for voices of color or traditionally marginalized groups across all areas. We're in a session and trying to ask questions. And at the outset, we want a diversity of opinions. We want a diversity of people speaking. Okay. I don't think we all, as progressives, have the same concept of what is considered diverse. Like, not at all. It got to the point where 3 members of our table, we had 5 Black women sitting at a table. We were pretty much right in front of the moderator in the panel. And we had 5 Black women sitting at a table. And my mentor, Stacey Hopkins, who's been on the show before, had to make a sign because it was either 6 or 7 people, all white, had been picked all around the room, all around us, as hands at our table remained up. And it was not until Stacey made a sign and people started taking pictures of the sign, It is when people started taking pictures of the sign that we finally got addressed, and Yvette was finally able to make her point concerning the lack of attention to not only Black voices, but particularly the support for Black media. And I thought this was a very interesting point, considering the fact that we've had all this conversation narrative around why Bernie Sanders did not do better with Black people. Why are these progressive groups not doing better with Black membership? You know, why do we not have more Black people engaging with Democratic Socialists of America, for example, or progressive Democrats in certain areas, right? Like some places do better, you know, some places do better. But when we look at these things on a national level, the representation, what we think should be our natural allegiances isn't panning out. And so she had a really good commentary around these issues, as well as she pushed back on this notion about citizen journalism and how anyone can just pick up and just become a journalist. And she's right. It is very, very hard work. I only do this once a week. It is so difficult. So that was just like one point of one session I participated in, but that was really good. I think there were other sessions that were also really good that were active working groups, like kind of how-tos. You know, we participated in a breakout, my younger sister and I, about how to identify potential down ballot candidates, talking about state and local level work, really building on Bernie's call from last week, right? And so there were some really good sessions that helped people kind of begin to think about how to do the next levels of the work. And I think that's what's the most valuable thing that came out of the summit. Now, one of the other criticisms that the feedback I actually got to spend some time with some friends from high school. I went to high school in Chicago. And we're at dinner with, we're hanging out, eating ice cream and stuff with my friends' parents, and their guests, their friends, are union folks, local grassroots, politically engaged people in Chicago. And apparently the criticism from their side of things is that, one, it was not very widely publicized outside of social media. So locally, you know, certain local groups and organizations were not directly contacted or invited to participate. It was just very interesting. There were some questions about where things were coming from. You know, how do people choose which organizations were involved and engaged? Were these organizations really representative of the local community and local activism in the Chicagoland area? I mean, it was a very informative and enlightening conversation. And I think that we really need to, as we continue to do this progressive work going forward, really need to look at how we're engaging when we're doing, even if we're doing national work, how that is impacting the local communities where we're located, right? Because we had this really big, you know, event billed as this progressive powwow that really actually had more of a narrow, what seemed like a more narrow focus of, you know, the Bernie crew only. And even in that instance, was everybody, you know, invited and involved. I'm not taking a side either way on that. Like I said, but it was really interesting feedback to hear from people who are active, involved in the community, who do support Bernie Sanders, because I immediately smiled when I walked up to the house. I walked up to the house and there's a Bernie sign in the window. So I was like, oh, your parents are my type of people. So I wasn't expecting to have this conversation, but it was really valuable. So it was a great weekend. People Summit, I think overall, I feel like it was successful because, one, it brought together people. It's keeping the conversation going. And we managed to find a voice to carve out space and to pinpoint areas of needed work and improvement. So that is my summary of the People Summit. I really thought overall it was a good opportunity. I know there's been some other criticism about whether or not this was being used as an opportunity to triangulate people towards Hillary Clinton. Ultimately, people had different agendas. But that's indicative of all of us, right? But there was no one voice saying you need to do this. If not, the overall resounding message that was at least stated was, we're Bernie, we're in for the long haul, progressive movement is moving forward, and we all need to have a voice in shaping what that looks like. So that was the People Summit. Definitely go back and check out. There was live streaming happening. Real News was on site. Definitely check out some of the clips and stuff from this weekend, because it was some really good stuff. Turning to today. Some of the news from today. Well, some of the news from yesterday. I know Ben already discussed a little bit the recent SCOTUS case, basically for Fourth Amendment protections in terms of search and seizures. This is a long line of cases that has, like I said, eroded the protections of the Fourth Amendment. I mean, the fact that we are now saying that, even if it's, in this specific instance with an illegal search, Don't know big. We're going to still let the evidence in anyway. Really, what I want to talk more about, just a little bit about, is the fact that reasonable suspicion. This standard of reasonable suspicion is actually rather low when you compare it to probable cause and preponderance of the evidence. In civil suits, preponderance of the evidence is, it's more likely than not that XYZ happened or so and so did whatever, and then reasonable beyond a reasonable doubt is the standard in our criminal cases. Reasonable suspicion is a very ambiguous. It's a very ambiguous standard. These standards of reasonableness that we have in our jurisprudence, when we're talking about police behavior, is actually very subjective. There isn't a real definitive objective standard, despite the allegation that it's subjective. I mean, often what is considered reasonable by police officers really relies heavily on sanction, ability to racially profile, and do tons of other things, right? Like reasonableness. Like even if we're talking about what is reasonable in terms of use of force, like there's a whole conversation around police behavior and engagement that needs to absolutely happen at the highest levels that does not. But yet we continue to have the Supreme Court making such decisions in a vacuum as if all these other issues do not exist. In terms of what is reasonable and in terms of whether or not reasonable suspicion exists to carry out these types of searches, I mean, it is highly problematic. It will continue to be highly problematic. And we will continue to see, when we're talking about we want to equalize the criminal justice system and we want to deal with these issues, we have really bad law. We have really bad law that has come down from the Supreme Court. We have really bad statutory and constitutional interpretation. And we're not going to see, you can't have real meaningful reform without addressing some of those serious issues, particularly when we're talking about Fourth Amendment protections from unreasonable and unlawful searches and seizures. Like, that's just it in a nutshell. So I just wanted to just throw in my little 2 cents. I don't want to necessarily relitigate, so to speak, everything Ben already discussed with the Sotomayor dissent, which is, I mean, she's had a couple of these dissents on this particular issue since she's been on the bench already. There is a case, though. The SCOTUS does have a case coming up that is going to address abortion. And I had my notes. Yes. SCOTUS is going to be, the other case was they refused to hear a challenge to the Connecticut law banning the sale and possession of a large assortment of semi-automatic rifles and large capacity magazines. That is this Connecticut law that was passed in the wake of the Sandy Hook massacre. And that they refused, they basically upheld, effective refusing to hear the challenge basically means they upheld the state legislation on that issue. And as we're talking about all this gun control stuff, it'd be interesting to look at different states and the measures that they have used to address these issues and whether or not we could adopt similar models. We need to look at model legislation on a state by state basis, right? We can't just wait for Congress to do something. We need to act on our own and getting state legislatures to promote or to pass. It might be harder in some areas than others, but it's definitely something that is worth our time. I mean, it really is. We need to be active, engaged in process. And instead of just getting really emotional and say, you need to do something, you need to do something, you need to do something, we need to really take the time to think about what that something should look like. One of the conversations we had internally, today with PA is about gun control. David, our producer, shared an article from The Guardian discussing whether or not all this conversation we're having around gun control, we know about, Senator Murphy's filibuster last week. I was actually kind of annoyed. He sent out a tweet yesterday about the number of people who had died while he was doing the filibuster. What's interesting with all these statistics that are used, one, they use statistics that include suicides. And there's little to no conversation that ever goes on about mental health. And mental health, we need to change the course of conversation on mental health in this country. But mental health is a health issue. And we cannot talk about access to mental health without talking about access to affordable healthcare, healthcare for all. Like, seriously, how can we say we need to address mental health and we disregard the fact that people do not even have coverage to get the help they need? And it bothers me as a parent. It bothers me as an individual. It bothers me as someone who has struggled with depression and anxiety myself. It bothers me that that people's struggles are used to pad the numbers for someone's argument about policies that may or may not even address the actual underlying major issues. When we're talking about gun deaths in America, the majority of gun deaths in America are actually suicides. Of those that are homicides, the majority, I believe the number from the Guardian article we saw today was 70% are caused by handguns. Yes, these mass shootings are alarming. They're horrifying. It is horrific. We have become desensitized to the massive numbers of killings that occur every single day, and primarily in urban areas. And we need to stop. We need to stop being desensitized, because that is an epidemic. Shout out to Brandon from PA who made that point earlier today. It is an epidemic. We need to be studying. We need to be understanding what is going on. We need to be making comprehensive and rational decisions. What is happening right now is not going to address the vast majority of gun deaths, the vast majority of homicides by gun. It's not. It's a small dent in the bucket. And that is a real problem. Like, seriously, we need to stop rushing to say, you need to do something. You need to act. Because you know where that got us? Post September 11th, that got us the jacked up laws that is Patriot 1 and Patriot 2. Seriously. We have plenty of examples of bad law because people just react. We need to stop with reactionary legislation. We need comprehensive common sense legislation. And this, what's being proposed right now, I see the Senate Republicans are proposing some more crazy amendments today. This is not it. This is not it. And we need to press pause. Apparently, California is going to start studying gun deaths and the effect of policies laws enacted to see, if there's any impact. We need Congress will not fund and permit studies on gun deaths. That is something we need to be advocating against. That is something that needs to be on the table. How do we know what will and will not work if we do not actually study, research, look at the information available? The fact that we have people going on and on about, someone else corrected me about assault weapons when really we're talking about certain semi-automatic weapons was an interesting point as well. I mean, the fact that we're going on and on about semi-automatic weapons when most weapons used are handguns. Handguns. Yes, universal background checks would be a good start. But what does that do to address the pandemic issue that is occurring in many of our neighborhoods, which is systemic of disinvestment, lack of opportunity, resources? It is more than just a gun control issue. We have to look at the wraparound issues, the deeply rooted issues affecting our country. Also, we're not going to see a meaningful decline in gun deaths. We're not. Otherwise, we're just pandering to people's emotions right now. And you can be mad at me. You cannot disagree. That is absolutely fine. I welcome dissent. Hit me up on Twitter, Miss Nono ESQ. You can email me theway@gmail.com. But that's what I personally think about what's going on right now with this gun control debate. I mean, we have a whole lot of talking right now. It's an election cycle. People are puffing out their chests trying to prove, they can do it better. This is political theater. And it's sad. It's really sad. Because we have a lot of issues that need to be addressed, and this is not the way to do it. But yeah, so the other case that was being addressed by SCOTUS is coming up is an abortion case. It's Texas HB 2. And, the idea is that this is a really important case. I mean, this is another affront, another threat to, Roe versus Wade. I mean, to the right to access, not just for, this upcoming ruling is a huge ruling. It definitely would impact women of color overwhelmingly. And it's interesting because we just saw with the Fourth Amendment case, we had a 5-3 split with Justice Breyer, who I believe was a Clinton appointee, siding with the more conservative majority in that case, with the 8-8 with only 8 justices in the court. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with this Texas case. I mean, because as we've already discussed, if we have 4-4, if it's tied, that means the case, there's no final resolution. The case just goes back, whatever the original whatever the appeal decision is, that decision just stays in. So from this article on UpRocks, HB2 has already caused clinic shutdowns. If left in place, the law could drive down existing facility numbers from 40 to 10. That's a problem. And when you're talking about such a large state like Texas, such cutbacks causes huge issues for people in terms of access, in terms of transportation, to needed healthcare. And also, it's also driven up the prices of the procedure, which disproportionately affects low-income women. When you have this coupled with the reluctance to provide active and affordable care, I mean, they want to limit your access to abortion or make it not possible. They don't want to provide affordable birth control. I mean, they really make it difficult for people, particularly poor people, poor women, women of color, effectively control and have a say in what happens with their bodies, with their physical health. And this is a problem, you know. I just found it. So a tie, if the decision is 4-4, it would leave the appellate ruling in place and uphold the Texas law. So we basically need to sway, you know, a 4-4 decision is like, it's crucial if this happens, because it wouldn't only apply to Texas, but still it would leave Texas women without any real recourse in this issue. And I mean, you know, oral arguments are set to start, and we'll see what the conversation is going to be around this case from the court. We saw, like I said, that Justice Breyer went the other way. I don't know if maybe Roberts, you know, who will swing, and if Justice Breyer will side with the 3 women on the court, and then also they swing over one of the more conservative leaning judges. I don't really know how, if Obama's existing to be even seated for confirmation. I don't know how he would swing. I have not looked at his record recently to see how he would swing in this instance if we had a full court right now.
Sure, thanks.
But this is part of the reason this case right now, and the fact that it's only 8-8, this is part of the reason why having the 8-8 court is so detrimental. Yes. So I have a special guest tonight. Very last minute, really excited. So apparently there was a dust up today at the New York Dems. And I have a guest to come on to explain a little bit more about what happened. I was not on Twitter because I was being a good employee at work today. And I logged in tonight and I saw a statement from New York for Bernie. Basically, yeah. So I will let my guest come on and introduce herself, and we can get to talking to you a little bit more about what happened today in New York. And yeah, this is kind of exciting right now because I'm really actually flabbergasted because I'm a big fan of hers. I'm about to fangirl a little bit, but hello.
Well, can you hear me? Sorry, I have to apologize. I'm on the streets of New York,
Hi.
so I'm trying my best. Hey there. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to talk to us. Welcome to The Way with Anoa. Everybody, this is Nomiki. I'm really excited to talk to you.
I appreciate it. I'm excited to tell you what happened.
Awesome.
I
just want to say, like I just hit up Momita because when I saw it was Momita, I got really upset. I mean, I was already upset, but I got really upset. So if you can kind of just give us a little bit of background of what was going on today with the New York Dems, with the delegate convention, and then what happened.
So this was a meeting that was where the Bernie delegates and the Hillary delegates were to come together and essentially vote on a few different things. 3 really very basic procedural things, like who is going to replace the delegates that suddenly couldn't make it. And then one very big thing, which was who is going to be the New York chair of the delegation. And why that's significant is that's the person who, even though it's just an image thing, it's the person who is on camera when they yell on the convention floor, New York State supports so-and-so. So the Hillary supporters decided that was going to be our Governor Andrew Cuomo, who's currently under investigation as well. Not as well supported as even Hillary was in New York, and Hillary only came in, with 48% or 46% of the vote. He had a very serious primary a couple of years ago, not very well liked by the state. All the papers are constantly criticizing him. So you could see why the Bernie supporters would naturally be questioning why Andrew Cuomo would be the nominee, even though if the insider secret is that Andrew Cuomo runs the Democratic Party in New York State. So
right.
we thought
his most recent antics with the BDS executive order. I mean, there's so many, like you said, there's so many different reasons why that is really problematic, having him officially in charge.
Right. I mean, this is a man who campaigned on anti-corruption, set up an anti-corruption organization, the Moreland Commission, and then shut it down as soon as the Moreland Commission started investigating him, and is now under investigation by the U.S. Attorney. So that's who we're dealing with here. He's definitely not his father. He's no Mario Cuomo. But with that all being said, we decided as a group to learn from the lessons of how the media portrays these conventions. We met as a group prior to this meeting, this unified meeting with the Hillary people this morning, and we said, okay, we're going to follow Robert's Rules of Order. We're going to motion. We're going to do motions properly. And a lot of us have been involved in the Democratic Party. My mom was an elected official in New York. In New York, I was raised around these people. Personally, I know Robert's Rules of Order, and I think a lot of people in the room knew it, and they were very respectful of that. But essentially, what happened was when the secretary of the New York State Committee stood up. He was going through the motions. He said, "Are there any motions to object whether or not Andrew Cuomo is the nominee?" And 20 people stood up and said, motion to object, motion to nominate somebody else. And we'd all talked about that beforehand. And he ignored it. And he goes, all right, Andrew Cuomo, he didn't say it was unanimous, but he's like, this is basically done. I forgot the words that he used, but it's on camera. And so they kept, people started booing. And this is, I forgot to mention that there were about four speeches by elected officials and party leaders. There was a dais at the top with all the committee positions, and none of those dais members were Bernie people. There were about 6 people, and they were all Hillary people. A vice chair was just nominated, Christine Quinn, who is also a very controversial party person. She ran for mayor. She she has a lot of questionable background, and she's not liked by the progressive community on top of it. So she got up there and she started to talk about unity, and then she started to scream at Bernie supporters, scream at them. The convention, it turned very quickly, and people started to boo that. And then immediately after that, we had our vote, and that's when he didn't let us object. He just basically, the secretary moved past it all and said, that's it. Governor Cuomo is our nominee. And at that point, I was sitting next to Kat Bresler. I got up from my chair, and I was like, screw this. I walked down the aisle, went to the front of the dais, grabbed the mic, turned it on, and I looked at him and I said, I don't know if you guys didn't hear us, but there were about 20 people who motioned back there that we would like to suggest another nominee. And he goes, that is it. We voted. It's done. And I said, no, I don't think you understand. And I pointed all these people that were standing up, objecting and motioning. And we had it all on camera. And they cut my mic. And that's when Momita came up, and all the, a lot of Bernie people came up to the front to support.
Right.
It's all on camera. And Momita, there was a Hillary supporter, an elderly gentleman, who I think we have the name for now, from upstate. He first hit her, and then she turned around and she goes, excuse me? And that's when you see it on camera. He hit her with a cane. I mean, so there's many things going on here. There's the fact that the Democratic Party was suppressing our voice, look, if they were going to win. They could just pretend to be Democratic. This is not something, they didn't have to pick this fight. It was ridiculous. And then not only that, you had a Hillary supporter hit a 24-year-old Muslim woman who's, it's their first time ever engaging in politics. It's like, that's unity? Bullshit.
And for anyone, if anyone has ever had the opportunity to meet Momita, seriously, she is the cutest, little, most sweetest, everybody, let's just work together person ever. Sure. Momita is a member of People for Bernie, co-founder or founder of Millennials for Bernie. I mean, very active, wonderful woman. And I mean, I don't even think Mamita could hurt a fly. So it's not even like anyone can try and say she provoked anyone or whatever the rhetoric people come out with, stuff like that.
Nothing was provoked. Nothing was provoked. Like I wouldn't even entertain that because anybody was there. There were Hillary people. The Hillary lawyer walked up to the Bernie lawyer, Arthur Schwartz, and said, that was not, I am so sorry. Like that, because they all knew. Anybody with a brain knew that just let us vote. Like you don't even have to, it was ridiculous. And then for this man to be like, you're disrespectful, and then hit Mamita for walking down the aisle. I mean, this is the Democratic Party of New York State. They're losing membership. They're hemorrhaging membership. They lost every single upstate county. And they're sitting here saying it's unanimous? And by the way, that was a closed primary with registration in October. So imagine if it was an open primary with registration at a normal time. You know, we got 42% without anything.
Right, exactly. I think we had an exchange on Twitter once before where we went back and forth about which was more corrupt, Chicago or New York. And you were telling me about how in New York State, there are so many officials who have been are under indictment or have been under indictment.
Yep.
Or prosecuted for, ethics violations, improprieties of various sorts. So what do you, with your experience and stuff and what you've seen, where do you go? Like where do you guys do after this? Like what is the next, step or are you guys still just trying to figure out like process from what happened today?
Right. Well, we issued a statement today. Kat Bresler and I sat there and we wrote up a statement, and then, we talked to the whole committee and said, should we do this? So we decided to put up the statement because there was a reporter who basically had asked for a statement from Basil Smikle, who's the executive director of the party, and he's a good guy. I'm friends with Basil. Like, I respect him. I think he's in a very difficult position. And so we issued a statement basically saying that because we didn't follow the rules and the procedures of the Democratic Party, the nomination is null and void. It's not valid. And so as a result, that means that the vote has to come up again at the party convention. And this is all optic stuff. Like, it's not even about, we all thought, we were like, you guys didn't even have to go through this. We knew that he was going to be the person, but we at least should be able to exercise our vote.
Right.
Now, with that being said, hang on a second. Sorry. He's closing my
Thank you.
With that being said, there was a, we sat there, we talked to like, what's next? I think what's next, there's many steps. There's the short term, there's the middle term, there's the long term. Technically we could file a lawsuit over the rules, and we might do that. Mamita, I think, pressed charges. We'll see what happens with that.
Okay.
And I think the optics-wise, it looks really bad. I think that the party the Democratic Party in New York has this illusion that they're stronger than they are. I mean, there are definitely machine-style politics still at play, and that is what won Hillary the election. But it is by no means in the numbers that they think it is, and I think they're aware of that, but they're pretending that the machine is alive and well. Governor Cuomo is basically controlling the machine the way that Hillary is controlling the DNC and like other parts of the country. So I think the next step is to just run. I mean, take over these committees. Get rid of these people. Their patronage. They're just like a bunch of hacks. There's no other way of saying it. They're like, where's our job? Get us our job. When Charlie Rangel got up there and he started speaking like cutely, he's like, "Oh, it's so great! All these young people who got engaged. You didn't have to march with Martin Luther King. We're in a political revolution. This is our political revolution." People were like vomiting in the audience. Charlie Rangel's telling us what a political revolution is, and that we didn't have to march with Martin Luther King, who, by the way, he didn't march with.
Charlie Rangel, who has had his own ethical violations and issues with public holding multiple subsidized apartments, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. I think one great thing that you also just said is that we need to be, for those who feel value in taking over, occupying the party, right, need to be on those committees, need to get in there and be involved and demand that the voice is heard and that the vote is counted and that it matters. That's a really strong point. and strategy, I think that people need to understand exists and should be a consideration.
I completely agree. And I think that one of the things that we tried to reinforce in our meeting afterwards, because we had a wrap-up meeting, was that the numbers are on our side. So I think a lot of people think that a contested convention, we have no chance. We had 2 contested conventions in the past 35 years. And of those 2, one with Ted Kennedy against Jimmy Carter and one with Jesse Jackson, there was absolutely no, they brought in like 1-2% of the vote. It was nothing. It was a joke. But they still used whatever they did in that contested convention to leverage. Ted Kennedy got the Hunt Commission. That's where superdelegates were basically created and enforced in '84. They stacked the conservative primaries to benefit the establishment. That came out of the Ted Kennedy contested convention. And in '88, Jesse Jackson got some of his reforms. We are this is literally the closest Democratic primary in history. We have so much leverage, and we're not even aware of it because we're being dismissed. We have so much leverage. And not only that, we have time. They know this is when one candidate is supported everybody under 45 basically supports one candidate, 80% of the vote, and 19 candidates are supported with those over 45. That should say a lot. You've got all the Republican candidates and a Democratic candidate split the vote for those over 45. One candidate under 45. We got a lot of leverage. So
that's a great point too. So just I have one question from you from our producers in the chat room. Do you think that this story, because I know you've dealt with it being a present face in the media, in support of Bernie Sanders in the media, this narrative that, the Bernie bros and it's so sexist in the center. Do you think that anyone mainstream will pick up this story of basically Momita being assaulted today?
Great question. I've pushed it across platforms. I've reached out to my media contacts. I hope. We've gotten a few people interested, but it's like, they've moved on from the debate about whether or not this is a primary. And quite frankly, it's kind of sad because, I'm in the mainstream media and I can't even get the story picked up, or maybe it's a blip, or maybe it's a retweet. But I don't even think it matters anymore. I think that's what's so amazing about this is that despite such complete dismissal of this campaign in the mainstream media, and when it is covered, it's covered in like a condescending sort of way. Despite all that, we've still been able to get in these numbers. I'm starting to think we just don't need them. Screw them. I'm part of it, and I'm like, screw them. So they're going to realize it. They're going to realize that a lot of these cable networks have been trying really hard to get millennial support, and I just say, well, maybe you should cover Bernie. That's pretty much it. Maybe you should just cover the guy that you're afraid of.
Right. So yeah. What would be your prescription for increase? Even with us, we do. You're right. We do. I always say I'm an old lady, millennial, just turned 35. So I'm like the first gen.
I hear you. I'm 32. I get it.
I always say that we do, but so many of us, we are overwhelmingly supporting Bernie, but we're like the largest, age group now. We've overtaken the boomers, but
right.
How do we get, all of us active and engaged? How do we get more of us engaged to kind of almost, no offense to any of my boomer friends out there, but how do we get it to kind of, neutralize them a little bit better? What are some, just if you can think of anything, just strategies or,
Yeah. It really is. I think this is the first step of the revolution, and I've studied a lot about movement building and protests and how this all originates. There's a lot of models, but mainly there's two models. There's one model that's about incrementalism and building top-down infrastructure. And that's the way the Democrats have done it for the past 35 years. That's not going to work anymore. Time is moving way too fast. People are really connected. Things are happening rapidly. So we do need these movement types of systems. But because of that, because this generation is taking over so quickly, it's not about millennials anymore. It's about Gen Z. I'm a millennial, you're a millennial, we're in our 30s. My millennial friends have kids. If we're not taken seriously, that's offensive, right? So I think what it really comes down to is exactly what Bernie's saying. We have to start running for things at every level. It used to be that the barriers of entry for running for office, and I've run for office, I've ran for Congress, the barriers of entry were money. I mean, you still need to raise money. You don't need to raise what you used to. And how do we know that? Because we've been able to get our message out without buying ads on TV. I mean, yes, Bernie bought ads on TV, but that's not how he reached us. That's how he reached older demographics. We have been able to utilize this social media world in a way that no one can even imagine. And so I think it really just means stepping up. If it's running for city council, running for local office, running for community boards, running for, whatever everybody has their aldermen. It's really embedding ourselves in the infrastructure and taking over. Because when you're not tethered to money the way that these hacks are, I'm going to use the word hack, when you're not tethered to money, you can actually make decisions and compromise. Like, that's the secret sauce of our democracy. When you don't have to sit there and take cash on the side or raise money or cut deals or go out there and raise money for a bunch of other hacks, you're actually able to, think about policy and do something and build relationships.
Right, exactly.
And that's what we've done so well. We've done it so well this election cycle. So I mean it. I'm like, don't wait for anybody to call you to run. Just do it. Okay, do it. I sat there in the audience today and I said to myself, my mom was an elected official. And so I'm watching all these people around me and I'm like, I know that guy. I've known him for years. I mean, it was a little intimidating. These are people that I grew up around, right?
Right.
And I sat there in the 25 seconds of thought process. I was just like, fuck this shit. They're not going to be around in 20 years. I mean, sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this, but I was like...
You are fine. Go ahead. You were good.
I was like, let's get up. Who cares? I mean, this is about our livelihood. They don't get that. For them, it's about their livelihoods, but they're depending on patronage jobs, and we're thinking, our futures.
Right,
so
exactly.
I really encourage everybody.
Wow. You are so even more awesome to talk to than just following you on Twitter and watching you on TV. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I'm going to have to beg you to come back some other time so we can dig in deeper about getting more of us involved in the process and other things that we can do to further, this work and the political revolution, and just chop it up a bit more, because I'm running out of time because Ben has to come on after me. But you have been awesome and definitely, I'm sure, gave everyone quite a bit to digest this evening. So thank you so much again. I appreciate it. And I know it was
so much for having me and for creating this space for everybody, because I think that's also important, is that we now have spaces to have these conversations, and that didn't exist before. We don't have to wait for CNN. And, I say that as a friend of CNN. This is important. So I really value what you're doing, and thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate you. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And if you see Mamita, please hug her for me.
I will, definitely. Thank you.
Okay. Good night.
Good night.
So, wrapping it up, you guys. This is what PA is all about. It's Progressive Net Army. Thank you so much, Numiki. Seriously, we reached out a little while ago. She literally stepped out of dinner to take some time to talk to us. So big ups to her. Thank you so much. I mean, that was really some dope information she just dropped there. Shout out to my girl, Mamita Ahmed. Mamita is, like I said, one of the sweetest people that I could ever think of. We've had to deal with this nonsense about the Bernie bros and the sexism and this, that, and that for a year. We have all experienced, different attacks from male Hillary supporters, female Hillary supporters as well. And now we have on videotape one of our own being physically attacked by somebody. That's not okay. Cranky old man or not. I mean, you just can't go around hitting people with your cane, dude. Seriously. I mean, it's even huger that it's an older white man who hit a young, Muslim woman today, right? The level of issues there is huge. Just want to correct something real quickly before we close out for the evening. Because I love my sis Q. Q keeps me on my toes. I misread earlier. As of this, going back to the Texas, the abortion case that's coming up before SCOTUS, as of June 9th, 2015, the Fifth Circuit has upheld the constitutionality of HB 2, except as applied to Whole Woman's Health McAllen. This leaves only 10 clinics in all of Texas. The only cities that have clinics now are Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, and McAllen. So there are 10 currently only 10 abortion clinics in the entire state of Texas. That is a huge problem. And if SCOTUS does not decide to overrule overrule the lower court's ruling, that will remain in place until yet some other case is finally heard in front of a court. This is what, when those people who are saying we need to consider, Supreme Court appointments, if the rumors of Clarence Thomas, retiring are true, when people say, we need to consider appointments, this is the type of thing they're talking about. Do I feel that that's a valid reason, to hold your nose and take the H plunge? I really don't know. That's up for you to decide. I'm never going to tell any of you how to vote. I definitely will love and support you all, no matter who you vote for. I'm probably going to give you the side eye if you vote for Donald Trump. But you know what? One of my best friends apparently is doing the same. And yeah, so we all have the right to vote. Also, before we go, real quick, because I got to get out here and make room for Benjamin Dixon. I mean, this flew by real fast. Again, shout out to Nomiki. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Real quick, our very own Flam Marcos wrote a sweet piece today on Progressive Army. I tweeted out earlier. We'll tweet it out again. I'm not sure. I did not get a chance to read it. I skimmed through it. And I already know from checking at lunch that he went through a whole big dish of documents from the new Guccifer files. So he has a new piece out today on progressivearmy.com. I will retweet out the leads. Salam Marcos, check him out on Twitter. Brilliant writer. I mean, we got a lot of brilliant writers. You guys heard from Pamela last week. Salam. I mean, we got tons of people who write for us who are awesome. Kate, lots of folks out there. So yeah, so that's basically, about it. My quote for the evening, I don't really have a quote, but it's my shirt. Let me help you. I mean, let me help you, help me. Let's help each other. Like, seriously, it's really that simple. I mean, we're all in this together. I don't mean to be cheesy, but like, for better or worse, even when there's criticism to be held, to be doled out, even if we're not having the sweetest, nicest conversation. I mean, sometimes conversations get serious, they get real, they get rough, but I still love you. We still all Progressive Army. You know what I'm saying? We got a lot of work ahead of us. It's not going to get any better just because we're going into the general election cycle, because we're going into the convention. Oh, last thing I wanted to mention, because I completely forgot about it because so much else happened today. Today, Black Men for Bernie announced the launch of their tour. They were in Ferguson with Michael Brown Sr. and Senator Cori Bush. Well, Senator. See, I'm already claimed it for you, sis. Senatorial candidate Cori Bush and other elected officials. Ahead of their Black Men for Bernie tour. They're making their way right back across the United States. And definitely check out their website. Check them out on Twitter, Black Men for Bernie. They're going to be here in Atlanta sometime in July, Alabama. I mean, they're hitting up several different places. So try and get back with them if you can. And definitely support. Go check out Cori Bush on Twitter and hit her up. So that is all from the evening. Let me help you. Let me help you find the way. You know what I'm saying? Because we need to keep continuing to have these spaces and having these conversations. And I'm out. Good night.
The way.